We are happy to welcome Dr. Layal Hakim from Exeter University, and she will talk today about mathematics learning through varied teaching and assessment methods. Welcome, Layal, and happy to share if you want to share your screen.
Thank you, Samira. I'll share my screen now. I'm going to go full screen on my slides, so let me know if there are any questions at any point. So thanks for inviting me to give a talk, and I'm very grateful and humbled to give a presentation to Brunel University. Especially, I see some people from the math department are there. A lot of my teaching techniques were a direct result from watching my own lecturers' teaching methods and approaches during my time at Brunel, both as a student as well as a postgraduate teaching assistant there. So what I'd like to speak about today, I'm going to touch upon two of the projects that I've been involved in the past, somewhat related to each other, actually. The first one is on mapping some of the themes from Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, to teaching and learning of mathematics at higher education level. So some of you might already be aware of this book, but I'm going to recap the main idea of what Kahneman calls System 1 and System 2 in that book. Importantly, when it comes to teaching mathematics, where we need to be aware of how instructional strategies and the various teaching approaches that we use need to be aligned with the diversity of the students, meaning the educational background that they come to us with. So not only in terms of what kind of qualifications and courses they learned before coming to university, but also what kind of mathematical mindset they have, and what kind of mathematical skills and independent learning skills they come to us with. So that kind of diversity. Also, training to become a strategic thinker doesn't happen quickly. So strategy in general, it's not a fast process. It takes place gradually, and it takes place after a lot of planning and changing. So plan, do, evaluate, edit, plan, do, evaluate, edit. So all of that requires time and careful consideration. It's not something that happens quickly. We also briefly outlined some of the concepts, not just in terms of teaching, but also assessment. So I'll touch a little bit on assessment. I was told that I have roughly 30 minutes and then a discussion, so I might whiz through some of the slides later on, see how we go. So System 1, in a nutshell, is the kind of fast automatic thinking. So you're on autopilot, you're doing things comfortably and quickly, you're in your comfort zone because you've done that thing many times before. So it's not necessarily something easy. So what sits in that basket of System 1 thinking doesn't necessarily have to be something easy, but it's something that you're very much used to. And because you're used to it, even if it's taking a long time, even if it takes a long time to do, you're in your comfort zone doing it. It's something nice. So students like to be in that zone because they know that after they do this thing that they're very familiar with, they're going to get some form of satisfaction at the end of it. So we've all come across those kind of students where they like sitting in that System 1 category, whereas System 2 is the more kind of rational, slow, and considered thought process, and which tends to mean that a lot of the things that we do that fall under System 2, the outcome, the conclusion, doesn't happen immediately. And sometimes it takes several hours or days or even months or years to actually get to that conclusion because it involves a lot of that considered process. So some of the things, before we do that mapping, some of the things that we consider to be challenges in learning of mathematics in higher education, so not just at Exeter, but also probably students at Brunel and across the sector when it comes to mathematics in higher education. We need to be mindful that the students coming to us are changing. So it might be that the kind of learning resources they have at school level are changing with time. So, for example, 20 years ago, they didn't have mathletics at school, or at least they might have had something similar, but they weren't using it so much as part of their learning and assessment at school compared to now. There are other online resources that students use now at school level, and also the structure at school and how they are taught their courses at school level is changing with time. And so the kind of maths skills and knowledge and things that the students are used to is changing, which means that we need to then adapt our teaching and resources that we provide them at university level as well. Some common difficulties: learning new concepts and applying new concepts and seeing unseen problems. So a lot of students, they really like that kind of algorithmic computational approach where they know how to do something, whether they've done it many times or not, they know what to do. So there's this kind of, they have a flow chart in their mind of how to do it. So I first assign this, and then I set my U, I set my V dash, I then do it. I've done it lots of times before. And sometimes when they come across difficult problems or proof questions, for example, so a lot of our students, they find constructing proofs, especially proofs that they've never seen before, they find that difficult. But when they know how to do it, a lot of them, they turn it into a flowchart, they turn it into an algorithm. So when it comes to that kind of like abstract type mathematics, that's an area that a lot of students struggle with. And when they know how to do it, they turn it into something algorithmic so that they can put it in their comfort zone. And also, one of the challenges that we see is knowing how to use all of their mathematical tools, whether it's mathematical methods or mathematical structures, to solve problems that they haven't seen before. And reluctance to seek help when needed. A lot of students, they come across challenges and then they stop, they kind of pause, and then they move on to doing something that they like, something that they know how to do, because they know that even when they spend time doing that thing that they like, they're going to get that satisfaction at the end of, I've got the solution. And they spend a lot of time with things that they don't need help with, and which means that the things that they do need help with don't really get addressed. So that reluctance to seek help, and there's various reasons why that's a challenge. So a lot of students, they might feel a little bit intimidated. Do I want to go to the office hour? I feel a little bit scared. They don't want to expose what they don't know. Some of them don't know what they don't know. And so there are various reasons why students are reluctant to seek help. And also consolidating the knowledge that they gained. A lot of students struggle with taking parts from different modules and using some of those parts to solve a problem. So they usually just look at a particular topic on its own, rather than thinking, how can I relate? How can I use all the knowledge that I've built to solve this problem? So that kind of collecting what I already know, discarding what we don't need for this, to tackle this problem. I would say that's one of the challenges that we see. And importantly, when it comes to university level, we don't just want to teach students a lot of new mathematics. We want them to become independent learners. We want them to be able to see an unseen problem and know how to collect various tools from various modules and say, okay, I'm going to now, I know what I need to use to solve this, and this is how I'm going to do it, and it's going to take time, and that's okay, but I know how to approach the problem. So that kind of independent learning is a vital part of being a mathematics student at university level. So now going to the mapping systems 1 and 2 into learning mathematics at higher education. Some of these themes that I'll mention come directly from the book, and it's a big book, so there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to speak about today. Students fall into the availability trap. So sometimes they say, I have this problem. It reminds me of these techniques that I like and I know how to do, and I've done these loads of times before, so I'm going to try to apply them to this problem. When in some cases, knowing that these tools that you like and you know how to do really well they're not gonna take you to the solution to this problem, but they try to do it anyway, and because it puts them in that comfort zone of doing something that they know already how to do. And when that's the availability trap. So something's available and they like it, but they're kind of in that trap because it's not going to get them anywhere. So one kind of useful exercise is to get students to reflect and write down why the method that they are using is not applicable, rather than discarding it. So getting them to use the tools that don't work, but to also review and reflect why it didn't work. A lot of students, when they try to apply a technique, they kind of say, okay, it doesn't work, let me just leave it. But rather, let's spend time with why it didn't work. So that spending time with why it didn't work, I think, is really useful for students. And a lot of students, I noticed, especially when it comes to new concepts or abstract type mathematics, they tend to disconnect a little bit, and they don't like to struggle. And there's a lot of benefit in struggling. There's a lot of benefit in struggling because it allows you to really spend time with why it's a struggle, what's relevant, what's not relevant, and there's a lot of pedagogical benefit to that struggling. But students struggle to struggle. They don't like to struggle. They like to be in their comfort system one zone. And so getting students to kind of slow down and reviewing and reflecting and struggling is really useful when learning, especially new concepts in mathematics. Problem solving, it's not just about arriving to a solution. So I've got this differential equation, for example. How do I solve it? But also understanding the theory behind it, why we're using certain techniques, why we're not using other techniques. And to get them to really kind of like scrutinize the problem and interrogate the techniques that we have and why some work and some don't work. And also system 2 in problem solving stretches the student in a way that makes them want to learn more. So when we do that kind of interrogation and slowing down with the problem, it kind of helps the student. It reminds the student of why they chose to do mathematics in the first place. So a lot of our students, they go into doing maths at university level for various reasons, but a lot of students, they just want to do maths at uni because they love math, they enjoy doing it, they like it, and they want to do more of it. And so when they kind of do that reviewing and reflecting and slowing down, it reminds them of why they like mathematics. And it also allows students to construct their own knowledge. When using anchoring, so anchoring is also one theme in Kahneman's book. The educator sets an anchor, like a focus point to the problem, and it says to the student, okay, let's ignore everything else. Let's just look at this. Let's look at this part of the problem, or let's look at this technique or this theorem, and let's kind of like focus on that. It kind of sets it acts as a catalyst for meaningful computations and thoughts of the wider problem when you have that focus point. Some implications for problem solving. So loss aversion is one of the themes in the book, which can prevent students from making the right decisions, particularly when solving complex problems. So they've tried a lot of techniques, they've spent a lot of time on something, and they might say, okay, all of this doesn't work. I've struggled and it didn't work. I've used what I know how to apply, and all of that didn't work. So it kind of prevents them from making the right decisions of what we can try, what we need to try now, so that it does work. Another implication is the sunk loss fallacy, where a student has invested a lot of time and effort into a particular method, and it might cause them to disengage. And this is not just problem solving, but all of this is related to student engagement, because when students realize, when they know that they have a system 1 and a system 2, and they know the importance of which one to engage with which, at which point in their learning do they need to engage with system 1 and system 2, it helps them engage more with the course generally. And it also, a lot of the challenges that we saw before, like seeking help when needed, and seeing an unseen problem and knowing how to tackle it and struggling with it, all of this helps students engage, because when they fall into some of these implications of some of these things that we mentioned, a lot of students, they kind of like, they sit back and they say, okay, I'm not knowing how to do this. Sometimes it causes what's now being called maths anxiety. And so it's kind of, it puts them in a little kind of, puts a barrier to their learning. So the next one, we spoke a little bit about this one, implications for student engagement. So importantly, students need to know, I'm now doing the system 2. I'm now slowing down. I'm now thinking, let me look in a book, let me Google something, let me think about something. A lot of students now, they're using generative AI appropriately to aid their learning. And then they say, oh, I still don't know how to do it, or I still don't get it, or it still didn't get me to the solution. And I think it's important for students to realize before they go into that system 2/struggle that they're going to bump into these moments. And it's the struggle that's the benefit to the learning. You know, you have to struggle, you have to go down to go up. You have to be down to go up. And it's also important for the educator to ensure that the students go into the system 2 kind of meaningfully. So facilitating that learning, helping students during that system 2, before the system 2 and during the system 2 as well. And things like lectures, but I'm thinking more tutorials. So I think at Brunel, they used to call them seminars. So seminars, computer labs, these are great places to exercise system 2 and to facilitate that kind of approach as well. If system 2 kind of thinking isn't facilitated, the student might give up and fall back into their system 1 unknowingly sometimes, and they might feel this system 1 approach is enough for me in terms of what I want to get out of the assessment, and I'm going to speak a little bit about that later. So I've put here on the left-hand side the famous image of Bloom's taxonomy. I mean, a rough version of that image, where at the bottom of the triangle, we've got the lower order cognitive skills, and then at the going up, when we come more to kind of applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating, we've got the higher order cognitive skills, which many of you have probably seen some kind of Bloom's taxonomy pyramid many times before. But here on the right-hand side, we have we've created a different image, and I say we. I forgot to mention at the start that this work on mapping Kahneman's themes of System 1 and System 2 to mathematics higher education was in collaboration with one of my colleagues, Professor Pete Ashwin, who's a researcher in the dynamical systems group, but also has a lot of educational related collaborations as well. So we've come up with this image on the right-hand side, where we've put here at the top the skillful automaticity, and here at the bottom we've got this naive automaticity, and system 1 and system 2 kind of spans that whole image. So the system 2, the bulk of it happens like in the middle. It doesn't happen right at the start, and it doesn't happen right at the top of the skillful automaticity, but it kind of spans the whole diagram. So one technique that a lot of educators use, and also useful to tell students at the very start of the course, that we're going to use this approach, and this is why we're going to use this is why we're going to facilitate this kind of method in your learning, and this is why you're going to be assessed in this particular way as well. A lot of students, they don't know why a particular teaching approach is being used, or why a particular assessment approach is being used. They think, coursework, I've got coursework, I've got an exam, I've got a test, but some students don't realize why it is that they're being assessed in various ways. And there's a lot of benefit in knowing what kind of approaches are being used and why. So the KWC is simply just going through, when solving a problem, looking at an unseen mathematical problem, what do we know about the problem? What do we want to know to solve the problem? Where do we want to get to? And then what challenges are preventing us from solving it? So getting students to think about these 3 questions when solving a problem, and becoming a habit, so that when they're learning and revising in their own time, they're doing this, rather than saying, I'm just going to dive right into the solution. I'm just going to start writing down something like, that diving in is a little bit dangerous, but getting them to sit back and just to think a little bit about this before they start solving the problem. And another good thing about getting students to kind of ask themselves different questions is by the end of each step, they're getting some kind of reward or gain because they've already answered something. They haven't come to the solution of the problem yet, but at least they've answered, what do we know about the problem? Or what definitions or theorems or formulae from the lecture notes or from the lectures does this problem relate to? So just identifying something that's relevant kind of gives them that little satisfaction to get them to the next stage. So just some like strategies for improvement. Interactive teaching, so using problem-solving sessions and group discussions, something a little bit in some situations can be a little bit complicated to get students to kind of work or in a kind of think, pair, share fashion, but getting them to discuss things in groups or with somebody who they haven't spoken to yet before in their cohort, getting them to like just turn around and let's kind of think about this problem together. It's a good way to kind of slow down. Real world relevance, kind of trying to connect what we're doing to every day. So sometimes a good way to exercise the system too is saying, okay, we kind of know what approach we're going to do, but let's just pause a little bit and think about where this problem is in everyday applications. What is this about? So getting them to kind of like go off on a little tangent and then come back. It's a good way to kind of slow things down so that they don't kind of get stuck on something that they're already stuck on. Active learning tools. I know a lot of maths departments already do things like this, like incorporating online quizzes, different media, visual aids, and different kind of like technologies. I know there are some like apps as well, mobile phone apps that assist with maths learning as well. Feedback culture, regular constructive feedback builds understanding and confidence. I'll say a little bit more about this in a future slide. Supporting students as well. Encouraging a mindset that mistakes are part of learning, that I'm going to give you a problem. You haven't seen it before, but it's okay. We're going to struggle. We're going to see a theorem. You haven't seen the theorem before, so you haven't seen the proof before. Instead of me giving you the proof, let's construct the proof together. So getting them to kind of like do it themselves slowly. And sometimes they get stuck with that. Sometimes you ask them a question and they're stuck and they kind of sit back, they're waiting for you to say it, because, they're indirectly saying to you, I don't know what we have to do with this proof. Can you just do it? But then that's when another question comes. What kind of stuff do we already know about this? What formula might be relevant here? And also scaffolding their learning by putting on extra support, a peer collaboration, also to keep them motivated. And there's a lot of benefit in students understanding what other students don't understand as well, and realizing that they have individual strengths and weaknesses that don't necessarily align with one of their peers' strengths and weaknesses as well. Celebrating small achievements to build confidence, and also small changes in teaching style can lead to big improvement to student outcomes. We've all seen that as well. And also adapting our teaching approaches. So every year I change something in the way that I teach based on something that students told me the previous year, or okay, this worked well, but there was this implication. How can I now change it so that there isn't this implication? And usually it comes with another implication, but just kind of always reviewing and adapting our methods, especially because the students coming to us are also changing as well. I mean, a lot of what we do works, and so that needs to stay as well. Framing as well. I find this really useful when it comes to getting students to speak about the problem. One thing that I think students could do more of, and has a lot of benefit to it, is communicating their work, their maths work, also communicating what they don't know. We have maths clinics. It's a little bit similar to like office hours, and sometimes students they come to me and they're trying to explain something they're stuck on, and I can tell through the way that they're explaining it that they know what they're stuck on, but they're not knowing how to communicate that question to the educator. And so getting students to kind of like frame their work differently. Now that we understand this theorem or this proof, can you write it down in a text, like as if you're sending the proof in an email? Can you write it in English? So this is the kind of mathematical proof. Can you write in English? If you were to try to draw a diagram and you're only allowed to use 10 words or 10 mathematical symbols for this proof, what do you think it might look like? Getting students to write, draw, speak, using different kind of modes to explain something that they understand, and getting them to do that to something that they don't understand as well, because that helps them understand why they're stuck with it. And sometimes I say to students, can you email me what you've done? They send me a picture of their work and they email it to me. I say to them, can you now explain to me what you've done and what you need help with in an email? Write it in text using words. There's a lot of benefit in doing that as well. And it's especially useful when it comes to formal definitions and articulating the meaning behind those definitions as well. So I might skip this slide or go through it very quickly because it's a lot of the stuff is already, I think you already kind of know. We spoke about some of these as well. I think lecture notes being clear and, you know, using good labels and graphs and things like that is really important. I also believe in too much resources. So it's really good for maths modules to have clear lecture notes, exercise sheets, solutions, especially brief solutions, because like sometimes when the full solution is there, students, they're very tempted to kind of say, I'm struggling with it. I'm just going to wait a few days for the solutions to come out. But when they know that the solution is going to be like a two-liner, as in fill in the gaps yourself, they know that they need to struggle, which is good. But what I wanted to mention about too many resources is not particularly a good thing, is I noticed, at least increasingly in recent years, sometimes when you give students so many things, here you go, here's a sheet, here's a summary sheet, here are exercises, here are excellent lecture notes, here's a video, here's a link. They might fall in that availability trap that we spoke about before, where they say, well, you're throwing at me all of this really nice, good stuff. I'll just look at it later. I'll watch it later. I'll engage with it later. And maybe that means that I don't have to attend the lecture. And we've all seen a drop in attendance, increasingly drop in attendance. And I think it's important for students to see those resources as add-ons and not a replacing educators and lecturers and facilitators. But yeah, implications for assessment. So the concept of loss aversion plays a role in how students approach learning and revision. A lot of students, they tend to learn and revise based on what the assessment looks like. And that could be different on a module by module level. There might be a module where they notice a pattern. You know, I can kind of predict what the exam might be like because there's a pattern in previous year's exams, or this particular module, there's only so much that they can ask. So, and so when they start playing this guessing game, they say, okay, so because of that, I'm going to start learning this way. I'm going to start revising this way. Similarly, when they know that in a particular module, they know they're going to be stretched in the exam or in the coursework, in a way where they need to collate all the information from the module and know what to use and apply in various places, they're going to be forced into this system to approach when learning and revising. They might also be missing the point that learning and training the mind for future topics requires more than to get a first class mark or a pass, especially when it comes to hard kind of abstract type topics. And the point of this slide, I guess, is assessments should be designed in a way that system one isn't enough. So if the assessment, and I would argue this on a program level rather than on a module level, that the formative and summative approaches to assessment need to be such that students are needing to struggle to become independent learners. To, at the end of the program, you're given a mathematics problem and you know how to tackle it. You know what you need to do to tackle it. Otherwise, they just kind of, everything's becomes routine and they're just regurgitating these algorithms that they already know. And so they'll be missing the point throughout their degree. And so kind of providing them opportunities and places where their system 2 is activated is really important during the learning process. Also, different types of assessment I think is important. This would probably need to be on a module by module level, in that depending on what topic is being taught, it might be that we're using this coursework approach to assess some intended learning outcomes, but we're using this summative approach to assess other intended learning outcomes. It might be that depending on the topic that's being taught, we're actually using this assessment approach to prepare you for this assessment, right? So there are different objectives behind different assessments, but it's important for students to be aware of what that assessment is trying to do and how that feeds on to later on. Later on might be at the end of the academic year, it might be on a program level. It's important to have some kind of formative assessment, importantly, where students get feedback on that before they go and do the summative assessment as well. And the assessment is also supposed to be in a way that helps students individually identify their strengths and weaknesses. So that through this assessment, I did these questions. This was my mark. This was the feedback. Now I know what I don't know. Now I know what I need to fix. And what would be really nice is if that can also feed into other modules. So it might be that feedback that they get from assessments in 3-4 modules might say to them, it looks like I have an issue with matrices, or it looks like I have an issue with constructing proofs. So kind of helping them identify what their strengths and weaknesses are. Building that bigger picture of student understanding. And also getting students to review and reflect on that assessment. What did that assessment do for you? Do you realize which part of the module is your, is your strength? And I know that for a lot of students, at least a lot of students that I see, is they're just tempted to say, okay, I've got my coursework marked and I've got it back. I've got 60%, that's all I need to. Or, okay, I passed, that's it. Or, yep, I got that nice first class that I was looking for. But meaningful engagement with marked assessment is something that really helps students. And maybe it requires setting a timetabled slot and getting students to review and reflect how they did in that assessment and have the module descriptor next to them, the intended learning outcomes. What intended learning outcomes are related to this assessment, and depending on the work that I got back and the feedback that I got back, which intended learning outcomes do I think I haven't met yet? So getting students to really do that reflection helps them as well. And it would help them improve. One of the reasons why students are reluctant to seek help is because they haven't done that mapping, they haven't done that reviewing and reflecting. They need help with that scaffolding. Yeah, and also making criteria and expectations explicit and clear, and just making clear to students, this is what I expect from you in this course or assessment, and this is what you should expect from me or this assessment. So this is, I think I've spoken to a lot of these things on this slide about different modes of assessment. But importantly, the assessment is meant to enable the student to demonstrate what they understand, and it's not meant to disable them. And sometimes we write questions in a way that it's not really demonstrating a broad understanding of the module. different types of questions as well. Yeah. A lot of us are using computer-based assessments, and although that's really good and it's giving students that nice bank of questions to do if and when they need to, but I think it's important that they realize that it's not sufficient. It's not all they need to know, but it's just one approach that does one thing only. Feedback, getting students to engage with the feedback is important. Students need to be able to read those sentences in red ink and get something out of it, and then use that to then go back to their module and see what they need help with. The final thing I'd like to mention, which is why I've put that image there, is I like this saying that says, take your shoes off before you come in, which is a metaphor. That means that before you go into like the lecture room or the tutorial or before writing down, so even more metaphorically, put yourself in the minds of the student in terms of the students in the room. They don't all know the same thing. Even if they've all passed first year, for example, so they should all know this thing about calculus, they should all know this thing about proofs, and they still have different, they come with a diversity of knowledge and mathematics skills and approach to learning mathematics. And so, and I'd argue that teaching students in small classes or big classes requires us to be mindful that students come with this kind of diversity and background. And also just showing kind of being compassionate when it comes to scaffolding and facilitating that system two thinking, being compassionate, because it's only when that students engage with different approaches and they engage with the course in its entirety, they'll attend more. And that by one thing about attendance I wanted to mention is some students need to be reminded that by attending and just by being part of this course, you're part of a community. And so if half of you stop coming, you're kind of, it's not helping the community or the feel of this room. But the more all of you come, it kind of helps everybody, including those who are going to come anyway. So kind of like reminding students that they're part of this community, this learning community. Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to mention as well about encouraging and engaging critical thinking is going back to that point of different types of assessment. So I know that one thing that, I don't know if they're still doing it, but something that I used to do at Brunel is having these weekly or fortnightly maybe tests that demonstrate essential skills in stage 1, I think it was. And I'd like to endorse this approach because it kind of reminds students that there are some things that you really need to know before moving on. It's non-condonable to understand these pieces of the topic. I think that's it from me. Sorry if I went a bit over. I do talk a lot sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you, Layal. Thank you very much for this presentation. It had lots of idea. I would like to start by asking you the first question. You see that you said that the struggle, so the student, anyway, if they did not struggle, they will not reach to be independent. And the problem that when they struggle, if they struggle in silence and they did not come to us to help them, how we can reach out to those students, shy students, or we'll call them silent. They struggle, but in silence.
So that's a good question. Some students are struggling. How do we reach out? How should that intervention happen so that we can then support them? So I would say how you identified that they're struggling is an important part of reaching out. So for example, you might have different measures of engagement. So for example, if you take a register, maybe not in lectures, but if you take registers in like smaller classes or in labs, or you've realized through their assessment mark that they might be struggling, then you can say, I gathered from this, from lack of attendance, or from you haven't passed the last 2 consecutive assessments. So using that as like a focus point to then say, It might be that you can do a little with some support in this module or that module. Reminding students of the existing support. You know, I'm sure you still have these like office hours or like maths clinics, reminding them of the different structures and support already in place and how they can access them. But also having that 15-minute chat with the student, I think helps. Kind of that kind of human interaction to remind them that if you continue like this, you know, it's not going to end well. So, is there a reason why you don't want to go to office hours? Kind of like through questions, helping them identify what support might be best for them, and then following it up. I think following up is important. So, in a couple of weeks, when you've had that chat or that email exchange, and the student now has a plan, in a couple of weeks, maybe follow up and say, how's that plan going? Did you go to this office hour or did you kind of, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Any question from staff? So if you have a question, please raise your hand or just open your mic and go ahead. Okay. Nazmullah?
Hello there. Yes, so my question is actually your experience of what you experiencing in Exeter. So you said system 2, right? Not providing everything to the students, so they need to struggle and they learn through that. So again, when they struggle, they need time to struggle, right? And they have 5-6 modules to complete in term, right? So if each of the modules have the same and they struggle in all the modules, and so in terms of their time commitment, what do you think? Can they cope with that workload? And if you have done that in Exeter, did you have any complaint for the students that they cannot cope? Or yeah, so I'd like to know your experience on that.
That is a good question. So what are the kind of like time implications or workload on the student implications that activating system 2 might have? I would say how it's being done is important again. So I would say, for example, let's use seminars as an example. We can say to students in this seminar, let's do these 4 questions, and then they do them. Some of them are routine. Some students don't come to the seminar because they either 1 already did them and they're fine, or they're just going to wait for the solutions to come out, which is an issue, or 2, I'm stuck. I mean, I'm a couple of weeks behind, so I might as well not come. So, you know, these are issues. So if we then instead say there's actually more benefit in us doing 1 or 2 questions properly and slowly than doing these 4 questions. So it would have to be instead of doing something else. A lot of stuff that we do, there isn't much benefit from it. Or it could be that students are going to do it anyway in their own time. But I think seminars and computer labs is a good place to activate system 2, because that's where the facilitating can happen. And by doing that, by doing it at the expense of doing the routine other 4 questions, you're not then taking up so much time from the staff or student point of view in getting them to struggle.
Right, yeah, thank you. But my question is, so in Exeter, so did you I mean, how much do you do it, and did you have any time implication? Any questions from the staff or the students that they cannot cope? Did you have anything like that, any issues like that, or you didn't?
So we have varied teaching approaches here at Exeter. So when it comes to lectures and tutorials, which are like seminars, everybody's using like their own teaching approach that they're used to. We do encourage different approaches, including facilitating this. And at the start of the term, we say, these are different techniques that you might want to use. And we also have program meetings to talk about our experiences and speaking about good practice and what's most beneficial to the students in terms of what approaches to use in these classes. But in some of the sessions that I've used, kind of these slow facilitating approaches, I think students engaged with it because they can see that the slowing down, we're trying to get somewhere. So we're going from A to B. It's going to be slow, but I want you all to kind of think about it. And even if it means giving them to something to think about before they come to the session.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just can I come to the same thing that Nazma will ask you? So in this case, that releasing the solution not on the same week or the same time, let's say after 2 weeks or the end of the week, we release all the solutions. So which one do you recommend or do you use in Exeter?
Again, when and what kind of solutions are being released is for modules here. It also differs, but we encourage staff not to kind of have very detailed solutions because of what I mentioned before, or students then disengaging because one of the traps is that some students say, I'm not going to come, or I don't have to think about this problem now because I know that the nice full solutions are going to come out at some point and I can see it either tomorrow or one day before the exam. One of the issues with that is that a lot of students are not reading slowly and meaningfully the solution when it comes out or even before the exam. So, and that's the same with our recordings. Module leaders can opt out from recording their lectures, but now most of our lectures are being recorded. And so a lot of students, they tend to, they say, okay, I don't have to attend it because I can watch it at some point. And then that some point doesn't come. We've looked at a lot of the report logs in terms of students watching recordings, and a lot of students that are not coming. The number of students that are not coming to the lectures doesn't match the number of students who are watching the recordings. And some of the students who are watching the recordings are watching a 15-minute lecture in 5 minutes. So that kind of availability trap is hitting students, even in some cases where they don't realize. But coming back to your question about when is the best time to release solutions, it depends what kind of support structures in place for the students in that course. But I would say at some point after, it's meant to be discussed. So usually we have like an exercise sheet, and then some questions are picked to go through with the students in some kind of class, right? At some point after that class, so that students can have a go at thinking about it themselves, and then knowing that it's going to be discussed in that class. Because if we give them the solution beforehand, a lot of students, they're in that kind of mindset where they think, I just need to know what the answer is or what the solution is, when actually there's a lot of benefit in discussing it in a class.
Thank you. Okay, Antonia.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you, Layal, for the interesting conversation. I would like to ask your thoughts and reflections on the different levels of introducing any sort of innovations in engaging and improving the students' learning in mathematics. Some happen from individual lecturers in the context of their own module or a session in a class, and some require some additional sort of support from the institutional environment, like a department or a faculty level. How does this dynamic work between colleagues who want to improve the quality of education for their students and the kind of institutional sort of structures and support mechanisms that they exist to enable them to do something like that effectively and successfully? Thank you.
I see. Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think it's important for colleagues within a department to work as a team in the sense that they all want the same thing. They all want to improve student retention, student outcomes, student success. They all want to improve student learning. Maybe how they do that is going to be different. We all have different styles, different ways of doing things. And also maybe the way they do that, it doesn't align with the university approach. I think like having conversations regularly in the department and aligning those discussions and conversations with what the university wants and what the university structures and services already provide, I think is really useful. So because that's what we're telling our students. To get students to use library resources, if we think them using library resources are really good, staff need to know what kind of library resources the university provides and what that looks like from a student point of view. So just kind of those regular conversations, I think is useful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon?
Thanks. I spent a really enjoyable holiday reading that book. It never once occurred to me that I should be thinking about how I teach maths with System 1 and System 2. That was really illuminating. I enjoyed it. First of all, you said that you did this work with a colleague. Is it written up? And if so, could you send me a link to it?
Yep. Shall I email it to you?
That'd be brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to read more about it. And the second thing was that it struck me when you showed the Bloom's taxonomy slide, it seemed to me the most important bit was that on the right-hand side, you're coming off the hump and turning System 2 into System 1.
Yeah.
So this sort of advanced behavior where the hard work of System 2 starts to become a natural thing. And I just wondered if you had any sort of concrete examples of how to make that happen, because it seems to me that's the really big story here.
That's a really nice question. And one thing about, so what's happening is that when students start engaging with their System 2, slowly it becomes those System 2 techniques or thinking approaches slowly become part of their System 1. So for example, let's look at some proofs of some theorems. I mean, a small example, let's proof by induction. Very quickly it becomes part of student System 1, but before they've learned it, there is a little kind of struggle, something that they haven't really done before. And there are a lot of areas in mathematics, especially pure mathematics, where they need to think and know, how am I going to tackle this? And a lot of those things slowly become part of their System 1. But I noticed in my experience that when that happens, in some cases, it only becomes part of System 1 because they've turned it into an algorithm. They've turned it into a flowchart, and they made it part of their comfort zone, which is not a problem. But what I think is a real challenge is getting students to do abstract mathematics in an abstract way and not turning it into an algorithm. A lot of things in real analysis, in group theory, topology, and things like that, there's a lot of kind of like requires slow abstract thinking, and a lot of the areas in such topics slowly become part of their System 1. I notice there's two groups of students when this happens, when it becomes part of System 1. Some students, they turned it into kind of like, I need to do this, and then I need to do that, and then I need to do that. So if I see something like this again, if I see something this abstract again, I just do this. Whereas with some students, it successfully became part of their System 1 because they now know how to face such abstract problems again and quickly solve it slowly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It seems to me like that's the real challenge here is to get them to use System 2 in an effortless way without trying to turn it into rote learning. But yeah. That was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the end of the session. I would like to thank Dr. Layal Hakim for that presentation and nice discussion at the end. Thank you everyone for attending. I will share with you the recording. And what about the slide, Layal? You will send it to me?
Yep, I can email you.
Yes, I will share with you. I'll put everything on the AEN Brightspace page. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Layal.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Layal.
Bye.